He is an award-winning animator, a podcast producer, and we're going to talk about his podcast, The People v. Batman v. Superman, essentially a whole podcast series about why the movie Batman v. Superman: Dawn of Justice sucks. It's Chris Ayers, everybody!
Hi.
Hey, Chris. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
Do we know each other? Or?
Yeah, we've met a few times.
I think so. Every time I've seen Chris, the past 3 or 4 times, I've asked him, do we know each other? Because we have a lot of mutual friends, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
And you've been kind enough to say, yes, Russ, we've met quite a few times, and I just look like an asshole. But you have an affinity, for better or worse, for the movie Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I don't mean affinity as far as you have affection for it, but you were drawn to this movie.
It has changed my life in ways that I could not have expected.
And the reason we're talking about it now is this is March's episode. This is the 1-year anniversary of the movie's release. It came out in 2016. Already a terrible year for so many reasons, but this movie didn't help. It came out March 2016. When did you see? You saw it in the theater opening weekend, I presume, or?
I saw it on the Friday that it opened at 8:45 in the morning.
Wow, movie theaters are open that early?
Apparently.
Okay.
Yes. I was surprised too. It was a bad way to start the day. I would say actually it is a very appropriate movie for 2016 because it's about 2 xenophobic billionaires who are trying to destroy an immigrant. So it's, for better or worse,
nice.
It is the movie of 2016.
So before we dive into why the movie stinks so much, are you a comic book guy? Are you naturally drawn to these characters? You go to these movies all the time? Yeah,
I love it. It's like most people of my generation, it was TV that got me into this stuff. It was like Super Friends at age 4 in 1982, and then the Adam West Batman TV show when I was like 8 years old, and then of course the movies.
Right.
But I think I started reading comics since I was like 8 years old, and specifically DC Comics. That's what I have the affinity for those characters. It's my favorite fictional universe, it's like my happy place.
Sure.
It's like escapism.
Sure,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so a movie like this has been our lifelong dream, if these 2 characters can share the screen at the same time, because they'd never shared the silver screen ever. Right?
This should have been like a huge pop culture moment, honestly. Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman on the big screen for the first time. It should have been huge.
Right.
And it just was kind of, it's just kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people.
It should have been huge. You know what I'm saying?
Should have
been
2016. There are people who love it and would defend it, claim it's a masterpiece.
Sure.
There are people, like, I started off thinking this was one of the worst things I've ever seen. and over the course of the podcast, 26 episodes, about 7 months to produce this whole show.
26 episodes dedicated exclusively.
Only to this film.
Okay. And specifically why it sucks.
Yeah, well, that was the premise. That was the premise to start with.
Okay.
And in rewatching it, and specifically the director's cut, which adds another half hour, makes it a better film.
Okay.
Still not a good one. Still not one that I would want to watch again. I've now watched it like 5 times.
Wow. Yeah.
It's
like if you're looking at a pile of crap, and then you take a closer look and you realize, hey, there's a little corn in that crap.
Yeah.
Something golden.
Yeah, something shiny.
Amidst the crap. That's the director's cut of this movie, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there are a few pieces of the movie that I do like. There's some really strong scenes. I like the first 45 minutes.
You liked the first 45 minutes?
Yeah, and then it goes so far downhill, in my opinion.
Okay, well, let's get into it then. Bruce Wayne, in a metaphysical scene, being elevated or ascended by a cyclone of bats. You were cool with that? Right off the bat.
I was a little concerned at that point.
Okay, because that's like the first 30 seconds of the film.
Yeah, it was. You showed me something I haven't seen before. That's cool. What I have seen before is the Waynes be murdered on camera for like the 30th time.
Sure.
Which happens in the first 10 minutes of this movie.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
I don't think that was necessary. But
we didn't need the full origin replay because we've seen it at least 3 times that I could vividly recall.
Everybody knows it. It's like it's mythology at this point. Everybody
Theoretically,
knows
we should
story.
all be Batman because we've seen the Waynes murdered so many times. Why isn't anybody else so outraged that they're like, you know what? Traveling the world, detective, martial arts. I'm going to come back, recruit a bunch of kids. We're going to go fight crime. Nobody's doing that. Thank you. That's my political platform. I want kids in front of me fighting crime. Brightly colored suits.
Yeah. And apparently they
Daddy
die.
complex.
In this film, you start with a dead Robin, too.
That's true. Absolutely right.
You don't
so
get to
it's
see the
bleak
Robin
from the get-go.
It is. That's my main problem. It is bleak. I mean, I think it's incredibly difficult to put Batman and Superman in the same movie and have that work because the tones of those movies should be drastically different.
Sure.
And Superman gets subsumed by the Batman tone, and I love Batman, but Superman's a bright, hopeful thing, and it's just a miserable slog all the way through, all the way to the end. You don't even end on a hopeful note. It's just
you end with
miserable.
Spoiler alert: the death of Superman.
Yeah, and his second outing in this universe, he's dead.
Right.
Already.
Right. Batman saying, "Yeah, I guess we should have been buddies after all." That's basically how the movie ends. I guess I'll go make some more friends because I screwed it up with this guy. That's basically how the movie ends.
I'm a little concerned about the future of this DC universe. I want to love it. Man, it's like exactly what I wanted since I was, a kid.
Sure.
See all this in the big screen. But, I think we made some lemonade out of these lemons. Doing the podcast changed my perspective a little bit. I can accept the movie now. It's like, it's like therapy. You have a traumatic experience. You have to relive it, sort of exposure therapy.
Right.
Get through it. Accept it at this point.
It's almost like if you had a song that you and an ex really loved. For a long time, you can't listen to that song.
Right.
And eventually you hear it on the radio and you're like, all right, I can detach the baggage and enjoy it as a song. Is that kind of where you're coming from?
Yeah, I think so. I accept that it exists now. Now it's, I've reached that point.
So you have this 26-episode podcast, The People v. Batman v. Superman. Am I saying that right?
That's right.
And you've had writers and artists that have worked on these characters on your podcast commenting on the film. What's some of the most insightful commentary you've had from these guests?
There's a certain perspective that some of them actually really like the film that I wouldn't have expected. Brian Augustin, who you had on your show.
Yes, that's right.
Writer.
Search for it on YouTube, right down here.
Writer of Batman, Gotham by Gaslight, and The Flash, and Justice League Year One.
Yep.
He's someone I expected to hate it. And he
hates everything.
He kind of, he's like somebody who informed my perspective.
Sure.
Because, he was writing this stuff when I was 10 years old.
Absolutely.
I expected we'd have the same reaction. He kind of liked it.
Really?
So I was like, okay.
What did he like about it? Just the general tone and direction of the film, something different. So
yeah, I think I don't know. I think he could more easily accept this dark Superman. I'm not sure. You'd have to listen to the episode. It was a really entertaining episode. If you love lore of DC Comics, there's a lot of anecdotes about the time he met Mark Hamill and
cool.
at DC offices, and it was really
Brian's
great to have
actually
him.
been around. He's a great guy, but he's kind of a curmudgeon. So.
Yeah.
Who else did you have? So you had Brian, a writer that's worked on worked on the characters. Anybody from the perspective of film, that thought of it as a cinematic masterpiece, or not so much?
So we had Abraham Reisman, who from New York Magazine and Vulture, a pop culture writer. He didn't like it so much. But yeah, we had a local ASU film guy. We had comic artist Jamal Igle.
Oh, cool.
So he was really a lot of fun to talk to. Well, the great thing is...
Get a broom for all these names he's dropping, please. Can somebody sweep up these names?
Well, the thing is, we start off as a nobody. Nobody knows who we are. And everyone I asked to do it and come on and talk said, sure. No, we didn't get turned down by anyone, which is great. We're not anyone, seriously. It's now we are.
I can confirm he's nobody. But that's not true. You came to this thing with a passion for a very specific thing, and people respond to that. So
yeah, well, I'd say anyone can complain about a movie. It takes a lot of dedication to complain about a movie for 30 hours, over 7 months.
That's very true. So what is your hope for the future? We have a Wonder Woman movie on the horizon. Looks good, in my opinion.
I agree. I have a lot of hope for that. And we're still doing reviews of these movies that are coming up. So we did a review of the Lego Batman movie. We're going to review Wonder Woman. We're going to review Justice League. But the Batman v Superman podcast came to an end. But my co-host and I, Dennis Cooper, we decided we still really love talking about DC Comics movies. So we started a new show called DC Legacy Filmcast, where we're going all the way back to 1951 forward. Every DC movie, we're doing a very comprehensive talk on that. So we started off with Superman and the Mole Men, which was a pilot for Adventures of Superman TV show.
George Reeves.
Sure. George Reeves.
Reeves, yes.
Yeah, with the S. That was technically the first feature-length DC Comics film, Superman on the big screen.
Sure, yeah.
Next episode, we're having Brian Augustin back to talk about Batman '66.
Oh, cool, yeah.
And then after that's the first Christopher Reeve Superman movie.
Wow, that's great.
But we got a lot of bad movies to get through, like, Halle Berry Catwoman.
Right, Shaquille O'Neal Steel. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't mind Ryan Reynolds in Green Lantern.
It was okay.
Yeah.
I think that movie was mediocre. Wasn't terrible.
I thought that they were trying to build the DC cinematic universe from that film as Marvel had come in with Iron Man. A character but not very well. You might have had his action figure when you were a kid, but certainly not a household name like Superman or Spider-Man. But it just fell flat. It didn't have that resonance.
Right. No one walked out of the theater excited for the next Green Lantern.
Right.
It didn't set the world on fire like Robert Downey Jr. did with Iron Man.
Right, and that's the thing. You and I are very much alike in that you grew up enjoying the DC mythology. Those are the oldest characters. They're the most tried and true characters. Marvel, when it was introduced in the 60s, they were kind of this young, hippie upstart, really, in comparison.
Yeah.
But as an adult watching the movies, the Marvel Cinematic Universe just completely surpasses what DC offers in the theater. I mean, Nolan's Batman trilogy, in my opinion, pales to the grandiosity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, it's unprecedented. The plan it's never been perfect, but the plan they've been able to execute with all those movies interconnected is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, walking out of the theater excited, you see Nick Fury in that last scene of Iron Man. You're like, Samuel L. Jackson.
And who was Iron Man before Robert Downey Jr. did it? That wasn't a household name.
No.
Honestly, nobody cared about Iron Man.
Absolutely not.
Or Captain America, really.
Probably not.
Iron
Man had the song. That was about it.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Well, what do you think of DC's TV universe? The Flash, Supergirl. Do you watch those shows?
Oh yeah, that's most of my time now. I'm trying to catch up with 4 shows a week, which is a lot.
It's a lot of time.
I'm a couple episodes behind, but yeah, I've been watching those since almost the start.
I love those.
And those are great. Those are the tone that I like. It's somewhat ridiculous. There's room for humor.
Right.
It's not as dark and mature. Certainly not as violent as the movies.
Yeah.
But it's fun. That's all. It's honestly, I enjoy things that are made for like the teenage audience. I don't think you have to be super adult and gritty and violent to be a comic book movie.
And there's too much of that stuff in real life. Movies are supposed to provide a bit of escape.
Sure.
You know what I mean? What I love about the CW shows, especially Supergirl, is you could have an ongoing plot like Jeremiah Danvers is in the custody of Cadmus, this evil organization. And yes, we will stop at nothing to find Dad. But first, let's have a little donut party at Kara's apartment. Let's just chill out and have a game night at Jimmy's place. Meanwhile, we're going to find Jeremiah eventually. I always thought that was kind of weird.
Well, for me, it's the format as well. It's closer to comic books when you have a weekly show.
Absolutely.
You'd have like a 12-part comic series or six issues or something. Mm-hmm. That's easier to do in TV than it is in a 2-hour film. To cram 30 years of history into 2 hours.
Right.
So.
And you got to think. There's the old, saying, at least in the comic book world, that like everybody, any comic book could be somebody's first comic book. Mm-hmm. So as much as you're in the middle of this epic story arc, you also want to provide some elements that are introductory to the characters, to the culture of the comic book as a storytelling language, and so on. TV shows offer that with their episodic nature versus the movie. So with that said, we have to assume that Batman v Superman was the introduction of those characters to a younger audience. What would you say to those kids to give them a little shred of hope, like, hey, there's more Batman, Superman out there. This isn't all there is.
I was so demoralized at the end of that movie. I can't even. I don't have that kind of hope. I sat next to a kid who was like 5 years old, whose eyes lit up when Superman first came on the screen, and by the end of it, he was begging his father to leave. I mean, that was compounding to my misery.
Take that, Kevin Smith, whispering to your buddy, parademons. Good Lord, man, that's traumatizing.
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken the kid to that. I mean, the extended cut is an R-rated cut of that movie. There's more profanity, there's more violence, there's more blood. Superman should never be in an R-rated movie. I draw the line right there.
Sure.
Maybe Batman,
okay,
but not Superman. And I love both of them.
Yeah, so I mean, when you see an R-rated movie like Logan or Deadpool, these are superhero films, R-rated. You find that's appropriate, or
yeah, those are appropriate.
Okay,
I enjoyed both of those.
Cool. Wow.
I just don't think it's appropriate for Batman and Superman
because they're iconic. They were the first.
Sure, I think Suicide Squad could have gotten away with an R rating.
It wasn't?
I think it was PG-13.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna.
It would have been better if it had, probably, if they had actually gone that far. But.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, where can people find the People v. Batman v. Superman online if they wanted to listen to any or all of these 26 episodes?
Yeah, we're in the iTunes directory or your favorite podcast app. You can check that out.
Stitcher and all that jazz. You can find it there.
Not on Stitcher yet. Yeah, but
I mentioned the one. Okay.
Well, yeah,
so on Stitcher. What I was saying is, don't look for it on Stitcher.
Just Google it. You'll find that. And
the People v. Batman v. Superman, but then also the DC Legacy Filmcast.
Right. Yeah, on the same platforms. Yes.
And you produce other podcasts too. It's not just this comic book stuff.
We started producing a local show. Your first guest on Phoenix Tonight was my podcast host for On the Grid, which is a local Phoenix show. Philip Haldeman.
Philip Haldeman from The Room.
The Room.
Arguably the worst movie ever made, just this side of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
I think so.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, so that one's all local stuff. That's interesting, creative people, local artists, comedians, entrepreneurs,
chatting about their endeavors in the greater Phoenix metropolitan area. That's
what got me into podcasting. And so now I'm 3 podcasts deep. So
wow, cool.
So maybe you start another one soon. We'll see.
Yeah, slow down, Chris Hardwick. It's no, but that's great, man. That's very cool. So, and that can be found on the grid, phx.com.
Yeah, that's right.
On the grid, phx.com, and a lot of great Phoenix and Arizona based.
And you were our last guest on that one too.
The last one meaning just the most recent. Not after me. You were like, you know what? We nailed it. Podcast over.
Most
recent. This is everything we wanted.
Yeah.
No, and it was an honor to be on there. You're great. Philip's great, and like I was telling you earlier, that if there's ever an ultimate deluxe edition of The Room, I hope that Philip's appearance on this show and that podcast will be extras, so that I'm somehow affiliated with the cult following of The Room. If somebody could throw like a plastic spoon at me at any time, that would be phenomenal. Well, thanks for being on the show, man. You stick around, and
I'll stay right here.
We'll continue the conversation. Chris Ayers, everybody. Thank you very much.